Hi everyone, welcome to the brainstorming session at the Startup Club. So every month we have this session, mostly on the first Sunday of the month, that we talk about like a certain topic, and these topics are all submitted by the community members on our website. So if you go to our website at thestartupclub.info, you will find a link to suggest a topic for our brainstorming session. And the topic for this week, this month, is basically how to validate if your side project is worth pursuing as a startup. Okay. So a lot of us are in this situation where, you are probably pursuing like a full-time job, or you are doing something else. Maybe you're a student, maybe you got like your full-time something which is safe, but in your mind you want to like, start a company, you want to like do something. So at at what point do you decide, okay, this side project that I'm working on, which is something that I have a passion project for me, that this is something that I can actually go and pursue as a startup, something that I can actually put more time into and pursue it more seriously. So that is the topic for today, this brainstorming session. And I think that we only have like a few people here, so I want to like, quickly get a sense of like who everybody is. I think Siddhant, you just joined. Siddhant, would you like to introduce yourself and give me some context on where you're coming from and why you're in this session?
Yeah, hi. My name is Siddhant, obviously, as you can see. I am a developer, SD2 currently, and I usually uh, I have a thought of starting something of my own in the near future, but I don't really have a solid idea or solid plan. So I just wanted to join and explore and meet other people to know how uh, people go about this starting their own venture. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, great. And I think Siddhant, I mean, like, sorry, Piyush, you already went, and you were talking about like how you were in the, I guess like you were, do you want to like go again? Because like this is a recording. I think Siddhant also would like to hear.
Hi, good morning everyone. Piyush here. I'm BTech in Marine Engineering and I'm presently pursuing my job in Merchant Navy as a third officer. And I'm here in this meeting to know more about this startup culture so that in future I can invest in this culture or this type of projects, or maybe I can partnership with some other peoples. So basically, I'm here to explore or to gain some more knowledge about this business and startup culture, how these all things works and how
Yeah.
do people think and proceed.
Okay, perfect. And Muhammad, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? I think you wanted some time off. But maybe Priyanshu, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? Like, give us some context as to what makes you want to join this session? Priyanshu, you're on mute. Okay, I guess I don't want to force people to like, speak if they're not feeling like it. So anyway, like I'll introduce myself first of all. So my name is Raghav. I'm the host for this session, but I'm also the founder of the Startup Club. The Startup Club is something that I started last year in April, and I was working full time as a business analyst in the IT industry back then. And my interest, like I really wanted to like connect with other people and socialize. And I was in a very similar situation to what Piyush was saying, like that he doesn't know much about these things, and she wanted to socialize and he wanted to get to know. And for the past year and a half, I've been running these online, community events and things like this. And it started off as something just as a way for me to meet other people, because like I looked outside and then like tried to find a place where I can socialize with other entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs and get to know more. And I just didn't find that like a proper space where people were doing it with a you know following certain standards. So I just decided to do it on my own, and I've been doing it for the past year and a half, and I've learned a lot about like the requirements of the people in the startup ecosystem. So for me, actually, the topic of this session is very relevant to my journey, because like the Startup Club started as something that I created as a side project, something that I did only on weekends. So throughout the week, I would work my full-time job, and then maybe on Sunday or Saturday, I would just like connect for 1 hour and meet other people. And then, I really didn't have to do a lot to maintain the meetup or the Telegram or whatever. So it was a very like not so intensive side project. And last year in December, I decided to quit my job because like I just wasn't seeing myself doing this whole full-time employment thing for long, because like I knew that I needed a space for me to execute my own ideas and have the freedom to take risks and things like that, because you can't do those things when you're working for somebody else. Because like it's their money, their strategy, and all those things, so you can't like take decisions on your own. And if you do and you mess up, then it's not going to be good for you. So that's the reason why I knew that long term I would definitely want to do a startup. And actually the thing is that it's always best to jump in earlier than later, provided you have like sufficient safety net. And because like creating a startup is a risk. And if things go bad, right, like you need to have some kind of like a safety net. And if you have that, I think it's best to like jump in as early as possible, because like the moment you jump in, you'll learn a lot. And you'll definitely you'll definitely like there'll be points where you have to pivot and you have to make decisions and you have to be spontaneous and you have to like learn from the mistakes and quickly pivot and do something else. So if you have that space, then I think it makes sense to jump into that. But I think that one crucial factor that a lot of people make a mistake in is they don't understand what it takes to be successful as a startup. Okay, and before I talk about that in specific, I want to also like get other people's perspective, because I don't want this to be a monologue. I want this to be a very interactive session, and I want other people to also weigh in on what kind of like questions they have in mind when they're talking about this topic of how do you validate your side project. So I want to know from you guys, like, is there any specific thing that comes to your mind when you have this topic? Like, do you have anything that you want to know? You can talk about, like, for example, if you have your own side project and you don't know, like, what are the kind of concerns that you have?
Like, am I audible?
Yeah. Go ahead, Piyush.
Before thinking about startup, or before jumping to the startup or business, there is always a fear. What if we fail?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in some sense, if we have back support, like some person, like maybe brother, maybe partner who is also earning, if I failed, he is going to save me, like that. So these type of fears are always in back of our mind. So how to cope up with these things?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it relates to what I was saying earlier about like having a safety net. For example, like if you are the only, breadwinner in your family, let's say that you have like two aging parents and they're both retired or something, and you don't have anybody else to sort of like take your place in case like you're not making any revenue or anything. That's a very tough place for you to jump into something and just see what happens. A lot of the times, like when you are jumping into a business idea, right, you need to have at least some kind of a runway. Okay, so a runway, I don't know if everybody's familiar with this term. A runway is basically like the amount of time that you have before you have to take off with your business and start generating revenue. So if you have like the sort of reserves and safety and financial safety and backup and all these things for the next year and a half, let's say that for the next year and a half, if you don't make a single penny, you can still sustain your livelihood. You can still withdraw some amount from your savings and then take care of your monthly requirements and all these things. If you have it for the next year and a half, then you feel safe enough to quit your job at that time, and then like go and try out and experiment and figure out your startup idea. If it doesn't work out, then at the year, like maybe like a year from then, you'll know, because you've spent sufficient amount of time to see if you're able to make any progress. And if you, even after a year, you realize that you're not able to make any progress, then you would spend the next 6 months, because like a year and a half is what your runway is. So you spent a year to figure out whether it was viable or not. And then after in the 6 months, you'll figure out, okay, what is my next step? I'm gonna either ditch this and go find another job, or if I'm gonna like maybe like sell this product idea that I've had or something else. You'll have to like figure out some other alternative. So that is how I would say is like a safe way to approach a risk. Because the moment you jump into like building a startup, there is a substantial amount of risk. You don't know what's going to happen. That is the nature of a startup. It's not like an MSME or something like that, where like as long as you have like somebody who has prior experience, you have a sure shot way of like generating revenue. But a startup is essentially a business where you are introducing an innovation, and you're betting on the fact that your innovation is capable of um, you know taking off into massive success. So there is definitely an element of risk involved. So you do have to like sort of like validate the idea. So I talked about like okay, setting up the safety net. Let me come to the other point now. One of the mistakes that I see a lot of like people in India, especially the tech folks, right? People coming from the STEM fields, maybe like people from the engineering backgrounds and like software engineering background. A lot of the times, these kind of people, they make this fundamental mistake of not assessing the market before they get into things. They get excited about like a certain very narrow use case, something that they are familiar with from the tech side of things, and they will see the spark in the innovation that they have come up with. So they'll have a certain solution that they're thinking about that would be a great product for them based on their own experience, and they will start building that product because that's comes naturally to them as an engineer or a developer or something like that. You have experience and expertise and enthusiasm for product development, so you start immediately getting into product development. And it's good if you're doing it as a side project. And as a side project, if something is like really attracting your attention, you're really passionate about it, go ahead and do it. That's fine. But if you're doing it with the intention of like converting it into a business, I would say that is not the first step that you should go for. Because if you want to build a product, you don't need a lot. But if you want to build a business, that's a completely different thing. Because a business requires customers. A business requires a certain pain point that would make the customers want to pay to avoid that pain point. These are things that you have to do research on to get an understanding of. Okay, without doing this, you can't jump into those things. So I would say that one of the first things that you have to do if you're making that jump from purely like working on your side project and then like making the jump into like setting up a business around it, you have to like understand what is the market like. Is the problem that I'm solving big enough that people would want to pay to solve that problem? So these are all things that you guys have to like understand before you make that plunge. So I hope that kind of like makes sense. I want to like hear other people's thoughts as well. Do you guys have anything to say from whatever I just said? Guys, I
Yeah,
want this to be like a very interactive session, so please don't feel shy to speak up. Yeah, Piyush, go ahead.
yeah. From your discussion, one thing is very clear. Like we must have some sort of runway. Like maybe it for 1.5 hour, 1.5 year is good, or maybe we have someone who is breastfeeding our family.
Mhm.
That is when we can think independently for our startup or for our business.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that that's the only thing. Obviously, these are all things that you have to make as a decision. For example, right? Let's say you're a student and you are not a breadwinner. Like there is your parents are there or whatever, and you do have a certain idea. I would not say that you have to like wait a year and a half and figure it out. Like I would say that like maybe in your circumstances, if your family is not direly dependent on you, then you could just like take a shot, like maybe like graduate and then like spend a year after your graduation just focusing on your product and see where it goes. Maybe you're able to convince your parents and other people involved to see like what you're able to achieve with that like band like time that you have. So it's not a universal formula. It's something that you have to like decide based on your own assessment of your circumstances. So there is no like one solution fits all kind of a thing. You have to like just you have to have these things in mind, that these are the factors. If I you have to prepare for failure. I would say, it's really important that you have a certain risk appetite if you want to get into a startup, but uh, you also have to have the clarity to sort of like establish a certain safety net in case things don't work out, because there is a very high chance that if you are working on an innovative product, there is a chance that it may not succeed. So you have to prepare for that, just so that like you are not thrown around in a very state of turmoil. Or maybe like you also don't want to have that threat of failure hanging over you as you go and build out your product, because that is not a good mental state for you to sufficiently like have a strong um execution. Because like if in under that much stress, you probably are not going to make the right decisions. And so it depends on you as an individual as well. How well are you able to like handle stress? All of these things come into the picture when you're making that decision as to when you jump into the pit and take all that risk. I see that in the chat, like Priyanshu has like said something. Let me just like read out what he said. I want to start a startup as a business, and I'm from IIT, so I joined. I have not good internet connection, so I muted myself. I want to know exactly what is startup or side project. Is it the same as I have money and I want to start my own business, or something else? So there is a difference between starting a business versus starting a startup. A business is just something where you have a customer, you have a product or a service, and you're selling that. You could call like your own local shop, like a street shop where you buy groceries, and that's not like a very innovative solution or something, but that is still a business. You have like a product or a service that you're offering, and somebody is coming in and taking advantage of that as a customer. So now you have a business. But a startup is unique. It's not it's a startup is a business, but it has certain distinctions. One is that you have something that is very innovative that nobody else is doing. There is a certain um I mean, it's not like nobody else should be doing it. You could have like competitors, but you are maybe like bringing in a certain USP that is unique to you, and you're somehow able to like compete with the incumbent players in the market, or you're able to like provide a solid solution that makes you like a very attractive alternative to existing players. But essentially you need to have something that makes you very distinct. Okay, so that is what qualifies as a startup, and you need to have some kind of an innovation where um another thing that people look for in a startup is like scalability, and how how sustainable is this, whatever you're coming up with. Can you like scale it up to like millions of users, or is it just something that may attract like like a handful of users, and beyond that there is no scope for the product or service? So I hope that answers your question, Priyanshu. And we do have like Muhammad and Siddhant. Like, do you guys have any specific points of concern regarding this topic, or maybe anything else that you have in mind that you would like to discuss? JN, do you have anything else, anything in your mind about this topic of like how do you validate a side project to know whether you want to jump into a startup idea with it? JN, you're on mute if you're speaking. Like I said, guys, like I do want this to be like an interactive session, so please feel free to speak up.
Hi, Raghav.
Yeah.
There is one more scenario, like as we are working professionals, and
Mhm.
we have some sort of capitals, and we also wish to do some startup, or maybe we wish to be part of some sort of a startup.
Mm-hmm.
But for the time being, we don't have some innovative ideas. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
say I have this idea and I want to work on it like that. But for the time being, I don't have any such innovative ideas. So, what is right choice or right actions for people like me, like who don't have innovative ideas, who have capitals, who want to be part of startups, who want to explore in business environment or do some sort of business, yeah, we are talking about a startup.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is right for us? How we should proceed?
Yeah. So actually, a lot of people are in this situation where they don't know, like, because like to start a startup, like you do need some kind of like conviction. You have to have like certain amount of confidence in yourself first of all, right? Because like you are like, taking a bet. It's like putting a bet. But the reason why it is not um unhealthy like gambling or something else is that you're putting a bet on yourself. Okay, when you start a startup, like you're placing that confidence in yourself, and maybe you don't have sufficient experience to know whether how much confidence you can place in yourself. um so you have to, like, I think I would the one advice that I would give to people in that situation is that, like, actually go work with a startup, spend some time, like, getting in that atmosphere and, like, understanding how these things work. And if you're able to, make, if you're able to, like, spend some time working in that environment and seeing, like, the thrill of working in a startup. And maybe, a lot of early stage startups, right, like they'll actually encourage you to get more hands on and, like, go above and beyond your role. Even if you're joining in just as a developer, if it's a small team, you would have the opportunity to make decisions and, like, get engaged in these, like, deeper discussions and things. So I would advise you do something like that to validate yourself as to whether you're fit for this environment and this way of, like, working and operating and things like that. So I would say that is a good way to validate. And I think JN put a comment saying that one simple safe way would be when your CTC equals revenue or potential revenue. Try to team up and collaborate, co-found with others, make it team play than solo. See, this whole, like, checking whether your CTC is equal to revenue, and that's a very advanced stage where you can actually validate that. We are talking about much earlier stages where you don't even know whether you want to start a startup and whether you have a solid idea or not. So at that stage, like, you don't have a CTC, you don't have a revenue. And even if you have started your startup, it takes a few years. And often it takes few years for you to get to that point where you have, like, revenue, or you have the metrics to, um you know you have the metrics to make these, like, kind of assessments. And also I want to, like, hear from you guys, like, can you guys, like, maybe, like, unmute yourself and speak what your thoughts are on this topic. I want to get that out, because, like, I don't want this to be like me having a monologue.
Hi, Raghav. We
Yeah. Piyush, you're back on mute. I see some. Yeah, go
Am
ahead,
I
Piyush.
audible?
Yeah, now you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah, we have new member in the form of Rahul Yadav. Please introduce what this session is about and the new
Yeah.
questions.
Okay. Okay. So I'll reorient you guys so that, like, you understand what this session is about. So this see every month, right? We have this brainstorming session where we come together as a group and talk about certain topic. And the topic for today's session is, like, how do you validate your side project, and check whether it is worth pursuing as a startup. Okay, so a lot of us, like, are in a professional environment. We're working full time and doing all these things, and we we may have, like, a side, like, a passion project that we are not sure of as to whether it will be a successful startup or not. But we have an interest in developing it, and when we have, like, we have spent some amount of time thinking about it and all these things. So at what point do you jump in and then, like, convert it into an actual business? When do you register, and when do you form a team? When you start investing money into developing that product or whatever? So when do you make that jump is the question. And I want to hear from others, like, are you guys, is any of you in a similar situation where you have a side project and you don't know whether you want to pursue it fully or not? I see new people like Mohan, Rahul, and JN. You guys haven't really introduced yourself. Maybe like you can also like uh, introduce yourself and speak as well. See, Priyanshu, I would much appreciate if you speak up rather than type it in the chat. I don't want to see long messages in the chat. If you can unmute yourself and speak, that would be much better. And same with like Mohan, Rahul. I would love to hear from you guys, like, because like this is a session where it's like we want it to be interactive. We want to hear your perspective, your situation.
Sir, myself Rahul Yadav. I'm pursuing my BBA from GIBS Business School, Bangalore, that is affiliated from the Bangalore University. And my question is that what is the difficulty faced by a startup or organization due to rapid growth?
Okay, I guess that's a very different topic, but we'll talk about that if there is sufficient interest in that besides our main discussion. Thanks for introducing yourself, Rahul. Jayan and Mohan, do you guys want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Hey, hi, Raghav. Thanks for putting forward. So, very good morning. So yeah, I just joined around 7 minutes back. I was just listening to the conversation that we had. So yeah, one thing that I wanted to put forward is I have around 5 years of experience, and roughly 3 or 4 years of experience into an edtech industry. We did have a startup maybe a year back, and I had this collaboration with one of the instructors who used to deliver the course, and we had a good a rapport with in understanding things and doing operations kind of work, or maybe interacting with partners or interacting with students, like how the courses has to be designed, what are the courses that we have to bring it to the market. So these were things that we had discussions, and there were certain ideas that were put forward by me, and there were certain, from the instructor standpoint, he had certain sort of ideas. So I think to an extent it did go well when things came up challenging, and I had a different perspective of how things could be seen, and he had a different perspective of how things would be seen. So during this course of action, I think we had some tough exchanges of like maybe in terms of the discussions we had. There was a lot of friction between both of us. The ideas weren't that matching. So in that case, I had to part ways. So is there a way wherein we can take the entire team together, or maybe make them understand? I had multiple areas wherein I could have I did explain him, but he had a different perspective. Maybe that was his perspective. So maybe is there a way where we can take the entire team together, maybe uh, give a way wherein we can also understand what they are trying to tell, or maybe is there a way where we can help them understand what exactly we are thinking?
That's a wonderful question. Thanks for the context. But first, I want to ask you, like, were you a co-founder in this initiative, or were you an employee? What was your role in that?
I was a co-founder. I had around 20% of share. He had the maximum amount of share in that.
Okay, and how long did you get to know this person before you got into that arrangement?
So it was around 1.5 year, because I was since I was working in some big giants in the edtech market. So maybe we had some casual discussions, and I used to give him trainings. We had some conversation exchanged. I felt that he would be a best fit if I can pick this guy, and we think of something doing good in that area. We actually wanted to grow, because maybe just a couple of years back, I think especially AWS and Azure, were in booming stage. So I thought, yeah, I think we can pick up this and start doing it. Maybe 1.5 year, maybe, yeah, that was the time.
And when you got into that arrangement, like saying that you had 20% and then the other person had this, like, how did you decide like this is the split?
It was basically about the money that we put in. I think that was
Okay.
the key deciding factor.
And when you got into that arrangement, did you discuss like, like voting share and all this? Like, did you have like an equal vote, or was it like dependent? Like, who had the primary, like, I guess, like the stake in decision making and all that?
Obviously, the other guy.
Okay, so you agreed that that was the case, right? You had like
Yeah,
clarity
yeah,
about that. Okay, so that's
correct.
good because like that is actually something that I would highly recommend, that when you're getting into these kind of arrangements, you have to have clarity about like the money divisions as well as the voting part, like who has the vote, the final veto, and all these things. So you had clarity about it, and the issue that you had is that you had like very strong opinions about certain things, and he had the same, and you didn't agree. And the natural outcome of that is that you had to leave, right? Because like
Correct,
you
correct,
can't make the other person leave. So I would
correct.
say that this is actually maybe like a learning experience for you, because like now you know that you are a very opinionated person. You can't like you can't be delegated to a position where like you have no say. So next time when you negotiate a partnership, I would advise that you have that kind of like the position, and maybe you will realize that you can't ask for that unless you're doing it, you're the primary co-founder at least. um,
Got it.
so that's what I would say, because like even in my case, right, like I was explaining my context of getting into the startup space, is that like I was working full time last year, and I decided to make the plunge into going all out into the risk, and like owning my own startup and being the sole founder. The reason why I did that, because like I know myself enough to know that I need that kind of like a platform to take the risks and be autonomous and make decisions based on my expertise. And that's like, that was not something that was something that I could compromise on, and I knew that. And I had a pretty good saving, so I had that runway, and I made the plunge without knowing whether or not I'm going to succeed or not. So so you have to like you have to be aware of like what it is that you want. Are you just somebody who's looking for like engagement with a startup that is going to be successful regardless of what your role in it is, or do you have like specific asks that you have to fulfill before you jump in? So I think it's also like a matter of like it's a journey of like you learning about yourself as well. It's a process of self discovery too, because like a lot of the times like you get to know more about yourself from the way that you operate under stress. So I guess like I would say I would congratulate you on first learning about yourself and what works and what doesn't work. So I guess like the next time, just make sure that you're not put in a situation where you have to step out if your wishes are not fulfilled. But that again comes in with like a certain amount of risk. And I hope you guys had like some kind of an arrangement in terms of exit clause and all this stuff, so that like
Yeah.
your 20% was not like wasted or something.
No, no. Yeah, they were successfully
Okay.
transitioned.
Okay,
So yeah, I
perfect.
think I also felt that yeah there were some challenges because he was acting as an instructor and a director for the organization, so instructor. So I feel that from his perspective, why did he think these things could have happened, or maybe why does he think that his perspective was right? So I wanted to understand that. So now again, what I've done is I'm just continuing to be I wanted to know what exactly this is because cloud I knew yeah there are certain areas wherein there were some critical things that has to be understood inside the cloud like AWS and Azure. So
Mhm,
now currently I'm working as a DevOps engineer, so just
mhm,
to understand maybe around 2 or 3 years I just want to take time to
mhm.
understand what exactly it means and why this is such a huge market, right? So it might be not only edtech, it might be with any organization. I just want to understand what exactly it is so that when I am next stepping in with any discussions, I'll be having a proper crux of what exactly I want.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. You need to understand why your decision is superior, and you need to be able to persuade the other people into being on the same page. And if you are not, then you need to understand why you're wrong and step back as well. So these kind of things are important. These are like kind of these are kind of like soft skills that you don't get in the classroom environment. You have to like step out and play in the real world to understand how these things happen. And I want to also ask you, like, what is your age, and what was the primary disagreement with your other co-founder about? Was it like a in terms of like marketing strategy, or was it a tech based discussion? What was the decision about?
So currently I'm 28
Mhm,
and I hail from Bangalore.
mhm,
And yeah, I think the major disagreement was with the kind of marketing that we had to do.
mhm,
Maybe we thought, what I personally thought was to go ahead with Google Analytics and other LinkedIn social media platform.
mhm,
But the other guy was, with all due respect, right? So with the other guy had the other way around, like he wanted the calling kind of thing because we had the data, but he only
mhm,
wanted this calling to be done maybe automated calls or maybe emails. Email marketing was something that he was majorly focused, which I felt we would have better reached to the guys, like maybe through ads or maybe through LinkedIn marketing or any other social media platform like WhatsApp and other things. And the second thing, which was a major blow, was partnering with like we were thinking of having incubation with IIMB. So I am Bangalore. So that was also paused for a while. So there were some key areas wherein I felt that there could have been more proactiveness, or maybe a yes from his end, because I would have taken care of that. Maybe partnering, or maybe getting in collaborations with some organizations, or maybe some colleges, IITs or NITs. So that I felt a bit strange that he didn't approve all these things. And maybe, yeah, I think the friction started from there, and it went on. And I had to, because I wanted to have my ideas being respected, but felt that yes, it wasn't. And I also felt, yeah, because he has the superior power, so he has that authority to veto it. So
Yeah, but
definitely, I think.
what I would advise is like you keep following that to see to because like you need to validate whether you were right or he was right. Maybe he was
Correct.
right, like no. So you just keep following that. I would say that don't make sure that you are maintaining rapport with the people. The thing is that when partnerships fall apart, right? Like you don't want it to affect the relationship that you had with that person to begin with.
Correct,
Maybe
correct. Yeah,
so it's important that you're also learning from this, because like it's a learning experience for both you and that other person.
correct.
So yeah, I'm glad you had like a very structured way of like approaching it. But yeah, I would also like to hear from other people. Anything? I think Jay, and you haven't really spoken much. You wanna speak about your context as to why you're in this session? Okay, so now let me go back to what Rahul was talking about. I think he was asking about like how do startups protect themselves from growing too fast? This is what you asked, right, Rahul? Rahul, can you like clarify your question? Because like I do wanna get to know more about the context behind that question. You're on mute, by the way. Rahul, are you there? Okay. Because like I didn't fully understand the context of that question. Like, why would a startup worry about like accelerating too fast? Because that's actually one of the objectives of a startup, is to like grow quickly. So I just wanted to get some context about your question, but in case we can't get to that anyway, like I'll wait for you to clarify in the chat, at least if you're not able to speak. Okay, Rahul, you want to say something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is simply that when a startup is growing too quickly, maybe there is some issues faced by the startup. So what is that issue, and how can one resolve it?
Okay, so what are the kind of challenges that you would find when you're moving too fast? That's what
Yes.
you okay. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer this question, because like my startup, I have a couple of startups, and one is a non-profit, another is a for-profit startup, and the for-profit startup is something that only started this year, and I would say that we have grown fast. I would say that we've grown appropriately. We've not gone too slow or too fast. I do have like a solid team right now. For the past 7 months, we've only been operational for the past 7-8 months, and I've made sure that the fundamentals are secured. We have a solid team, and we have a solid product that we're working on, and we are soon going to launch the product. And I would say that I've seen other areas where startups have failed from having certain things happen too quickly. And one of the biggest areas where I think people need to watch out is having too much money. Too much money is a very too much money too early on is very, very dangerous, in my opinion, from what I've seen. because what happens is that a lot of the times the financial constraints often lead you to innovate. It kind of like necessitates innovation. It kind of necessitates that you keep the operational loop very tight, and you spend sufficient amount of thought behind like how you're doing things. And that's what goes wrong with like startups that receive too much funding too soon. What they end up doing is that they start like leaking money like crazy, because like they have a lot of money and they haven't like tightened up their operational loop. So a lot of money goes to waste, and eventually they get to a point where they don't have the confidence to deliver on the promises that they've made to their investors. So a lot of the times they end up stopping things and returning back the money, or like they just like break up. And if you guys have seen this, right? Recently, a lot of like startups have gone through that loop.
Sir, so my second question is that when we are moving in a direction like so what is the ideal scenarios, ideal time to get in investors, like if
Yeah,
there is many investors, we can find a conflict between them, like
yeah,
the other investor have its own point in any scenarios like marketing, financing, and all the things.
yeah. That's a great question actually. When do you get an investor on board, right? So actually, the way that I look at investors is that like it's like a marriage. Okay, there have been cases where like startups failed because of the kind of investors they got on. A lot of people live under the assumption that if you get an investor, that's a success. It's a success milestone or something. It's not the case. You have to be very careful about like who you're getting in bed with. It's just like the same kind of in marriage, right? You don't want to celebrate you getting married to just anybody. You want to make sure that the person you're marrying is right for you, that they are going to be there for you for the long term, and you have a good relationship with them, and there is harmony in that relationship, and you're able to be a team player. You're both going in the same direction, you're not getting split into different directions. All these things are important in a marriage. The same thing is important in an investor relationship as well, because you have to stop assuming that investor is like coming with the upper hand because they're coming at the money, and you have the lower hand, so you have to like just say yes to whatever they say. It's actually funny how analogous the situation is, because a lot of I see that everybody in here is male, right? Like a lot of guys think that women have the upper hand, and as long as you get a partnership, it's like it's fine. But it's not the case. You are getting into an equal relationship. You have to have the same amount of respect that your partner is getting. You have to have the same amount of like privileges in the relationship as your partner. It's the same thing with an investor relationship as well. And I think a lot of people fail to realize this, and they jump into like disadvantageous relationships with investors. And investors are very good at this. They are very good at like framing the relationship in such a way that it's advantageous to them and not so much to you. And because a lot of people are first time founders and they're getting into these kind of things, they don't realize the pitfalls. So in order to answer the question of like when do you get an investor, right? Like I would say that the first thing that you do is make sure that the point at which you are getting an investor is at that point you should have a sufficient demonstration of the potential of your product or your startup, so that you can have like sufficient competition among like potential investors. That is like a good point for you to actually like know from having the experience of having talked to multiple investors and looking at what they're asking for, so that like you can make the right decision. It's kind of like dating. Now you want to make sure that you're dating multiple people before you commit to one person. It's kind of like that. So you once you have a product and you have like maybe like certain amount of traction, and there is a clear promise that this is going to succeed, and now you need like a certain amount of funding to scale up the product. That's when I think it's a sweet spot. But again, these things differ from product to product and industry to industry, because a lot of the times, for example, if you're getting into like space technology, right, you're not going to have like customers before you get an investor. You have to have an investor first, because it's a very investment heavy sector. So you probably would need like certain tens of crores before you even have a prototype for a space vehicle or something like that. So you need to make sure that at that, I mean, those kind of sectors will come with different considerations. But for most products, right, like for most things, you can do some kind of a prototype or an MVP or something to demonstrate what it's going to be like. If you're approaching investors with a pitch deck, right, I think that's a very disadvantaged situation for you, because like you can't sufficiently demonstrate that this has potential. And a lot of investors see like tens and tens of people with pitch decks coming in and looking for money, and they are wary of it too, so they would not give you the best deal even if they see the promise in your product. So I would say that like do some amount of like, you need to have your own investment. You need to first get your own friends and family to invest. You need to get your own investment in, because that inspires confidence. Because like you put your money where your mouth is, and you've gotten your close people close to you to also invest. So at that is like, bootstrapping. You're basically like bootstrapping money from different people, and that, like you may have some certain arrangements with your friends and family as to what they're getting out of it. But having that, and then like, using that money to build your prototype or your MVP or whatever to get the initial wave of customers, that is very good to demonstrate the potential of your product. And then once you've done that, then you can have like a level playing field of like competition among the potential investors, and then you can choose the best one out of them. So investors will go out of their way to give you the best deal if they also realize that they're in competition with other investors who see the promise in your product. So it's kind of like that.
Yes, sir.
So yeah.
Sir, like we previously said that to know our investor is very important, and every entrepreneurs know that things. So what is the how can entrepreneurs know the investors? Like entrepreneurs are their own circles or constraint, and investor is big. So how can know?
Yeah, so that's another good point. I think, see, a lot of the times you won't know for sure, because like it's just like in marriage, right? Like maybe you get to know the person and you check the basis, but you don't know the future. So that's why legal contracts are extremely important when you're getting into an investor relationship. And you need to make sure that you are clear as to what are like your negotiables and what are your non-negotiables, and making sure that you frame that all in a proper legal document. And this is where you need to get the consultation of a legal firm. For example, my startup is very early. Okay, it's only like 8 months, and I already have like a retainership with a legal firm who advises me on these things. Even if I'm getting an employee on board, and they are coming in with a certain investment from my side, I need to make sure that there is a certain proper legal structure around that relationship. So I would say that like you need to make sure that you have like a certain partnership with a legal firm. Like maybe you get into retainership with them, or you pay a one-time fee when you're getting into an investor relationship, and to make sure that you are drafting the legal contract in your favor, because they will do it themselves, but it will not be in your favor. So you have to make sure that you have a legal counsel to make sure that the agreement is drafted in your legal in your favor. And I think one of the most important things, actually, I want to mention one thing, is that I have a hard stop at 12, so we have like 9 minutes, but I want to finish this answer. So you need to make sure that there are two things that you're taken care of. Okay, on the financial side, whatever money they're giving you, right, there is a certain exchange. It is not a like they are giving you free money. They are giving it for something in return, right? So you need to understand what is it that you're getting, they're getting in return from you. And a lot of the times, like you have to have like some kind of a rough valuation for your product or service before these things are made. Because like when they give a certain amount of money, right, they're probably like asking a certain amount of equity in return. And when you get into these kind of things, like you need to make sure that the valuation is proper. You need to be satisfied. You need to be on the same page with the investor about your valuation. And also the other thing is that you need to also make sure that there is a proper exit clause for their investment. What are they getting in relationship with you for? Are they looking for a quick exit? Are they looking for a long-term partnership? Are they looking for some other thing that you're not aware of? So you need to have a clarity about what they're getting in return, because only then you will know enough to make sense out of whether that deal makes sense to them or not. So you have to make sure that your interests are satisfied, at the same time their interests are satisfied, and you're all on the same page. Only then you have a foundation for a healthy relationship. And the other thing is also in terms of voting rights. A lot of the times investors will come in with their own expertise in the domain. A lot of investors are like not sector agnostic. They will want to invest in specific sectors because they have like let's say they have somebody on their board of their VC firm, or somebody who has expertise in that, and they're also coming in with a certain exchange of benefits. They're not just coming in with money, but they're also coming in with a council of experts who are able to like advise you on that. So in that situation, you need to understand that if it is important for you that you are the decision making authority, the final decision making authority, then you need to make sure that those things are put in the agreement, that you have the final vote, they don't have a vote, and all these things. So these things are important that you establish in the legal contract before you get into that relationship. I think Piyush, you have raised your hand. Yeah.
One thing I want to know that where we will got to know like what a startup are growing, what are new startup, where I can partnership with other people in certain startups, where we got these all informations.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this community. Like the reason why I've been doing this is because I didn't find that there is no like social scene that is like pan India. I mean, if you go to live in Bangalore, right? Bangalore has a lot of these entrepreneurs, and you can probably like go sit in a cafe, and you'll probably like run into somebody who's also a founder. But it's not like that in most of the country, and that's one of the reasons why I started the startup club, is so that like we can socialize with other people. I want to like I think somebody else was asking about what I do for my startup. Actually, we are building like a bunch of SaaS products, and one of the products we're building is actually for the startup club. We want to like create this platform where people can socialize and discover other people in various stages of their startup journey. So yeah, that's the product. We're basically building a mobile app for iOS and Android that will allow individuals to come in and discover other people that they're looking for. Whether you're looking for a co-founder, whether you're looking for an investor, whether you're looking for a team for your startup or whatever, these are all things that you can do using that app. And yeah, so that's what we're doing.
So for the time being, there is no common platform where we can connect or where we can talk to other participants of the steps.
I would not say that there is no platform, because you can find, like, for example, if you go in LinkedIn itself, you'll see a lot of people there, and you can maybe like cold message them and get into something. But also you can do the same in Reddit. If you're looking for something specific, right, you can go to Startup India, r/Startup India, or startups, and you can go and like post your requirement, and somebody may respond to you. But in my opinion, these are not very optimized. It's not very streamlined. So that's why we're entering the space and building an app specifically for that purpose. But yeah, I would not say that there is no avenue. It's just that they're not very streamlined. So we have like maybe like 3 minutes left. I think Priyanshu was asking like how to find investors for your startup. Honestly, you guys, I mean, like most people don't understand how much money there is out there just lying there. There is no dearth of investors. There is only dearth of good ideas, and good founders who are capable of executing that. So there's way too many investors. Okay, like there's a lot of money out there. So I would say that if you have a successful product, right, using a platform like ours, actually we conduct these events with investors. Actually, every month we have this like startup pitch workshop. So if you have a product and idea, you can go to our website. I'll put the website in the chat. It's thestartupclub.info. So you can go there and you can sign up to be part of that startup pitch workshop, where you can pitch your product, and you'll get a certain advice from our investor panel. So do that, and you'll definitely like even if you don't get investors right away, you'll have the avenues. I would say like attend events as well. So one of the like there is actually an event coming up in the end of this month. I think the registrations are maybe closed, but this is an event where we have like 5,000 different startups coming in, and this is it's in Kerala. So you have to like book in advance and then like come there. So we last time I actually went there last year.
Kindly repeat which event is going to happen.
It's called Huddle Global. Okay, Huddle Global. It's happening in Kovalam in Kerala. I'm putting the name of that event in the chat. You guys can look it up, and it's basically an event where like a lot of investors come in, and they'll also tell you exactly what they're looking for. And you can actually, like a lot of them are looking for to invest like maybe like 2 to 3 crores for a certain percentage. They'll have a fixed percentage, and they'll tell you exactly what they're looking for. So I would say that go to these kind of events. That's where you have like face-to-face interactions with these people, and you can have a certain amount of credibility for them as well, because like they wouldn't be there unless they're vetted to be like proper VC firms or whatever. So yeah, I would say attend those events, and also watch out on the online space as well. But also like watch out for our application, because like in our app, like we will make it a lot easier for people to come and find investors and all this stuff. So we have like a minute left. I think yeah, we are thanks to everyone for participating in the session. And I would really love to see you guys again for the next month when we have these brainstorming sessions, but also like join our other events as well. Almost every week we have a session of some value. Like we have this pitch workshop, where you can get to see other people pitching their product, and they'll get the feedback, and you get to understand what are the things that are involved in building a startup and all this stuff. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining in. See you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you, Raghav.